We've been looking forward to visiting York for a long time, a city where almost every street seems to have a story to tell. From Roman foundations to medieval alleyways, York has spent nearly 2,000 years quietly reinventing itself while somehow never losing its character. The best way to explore is simply to wander, weaving through bustling streets, ducking into independent shops, and accepting that every quick look will probably cost you at least another 20 minutes. Yes, it's busy, but somehow that's all part of the atmosphere. Only moments away, it's easy to stumble across somewhere altogether quieter. York Oratory isn't nearly as well known as the Minster, but stepping inside felt like discovering one of the city's hidden treasures. Sunlight streamed through richly coloured stained glass windows, filling the church with an incredible warmth, while the ornate high altar draws your eye the moment you walk through the door. While Betty's may be York's most famous tea room, we found ourselves at Parlourmaid instead, a charming little cafe inside a beautifully crooked timber-framed building. The cream tea certainly didn't disappoint either. Warm scones, thick clotted cream, strawberry jam and a proper Yorkshire brew. I'd call that time well spent. Towering above it all is York Minster. Construction began in the 1200s and took around 250 years to complete. You can see it from almost everywhere in the city, and somehow it never stops catching your eye. The closer you get, the more details you notice. Hundreds of carved figures, intricate stonework, and enough gargoyles to make you wonder whether medieval architects were having a bit more fun than we give them credit for. Inside is where it really comes alive. The Great East Window is the largest expanse of medieval stained glass in Britain and somehow survived centuries of history, including being carefully removed during the Second World War to protect it from bombing. Standing beneath it, it's difficult not to stop talking for a moment. Not because there's a sign telling you to be quiet, it just feels like the right thing to do. We'd planned to spend about half an hour here. A good travel itinerary, we've discovered, is mostly a list of optimistic guesses. Whilst exploring the crypt, we stopped to watch a short film about the Minster's ongoing conservation. It's easy to think of a building like this as something that simply survived for centuries, but the reality is very different. Behind the scenes, skilled craftspeople are constantly repairing stonework, conserving stained glass, and using technologies like 3D laser scanning to record every detail of the cathedral. The same digital techniques have even been used to recreate the long-lost shrine of St. William, giving visitors a glimpse of something that disappeared centuries ago. It was a reminder that York Minster isn't just a piece of history, it's a living building still being cared for every single day. As remarkable as York's history is, there was another reason we made the trip. Because for much of the 20th century, York wasn't just famous for its cathedral. It was one of Britain's chocolate capitals, home to names like Rowntree's and Terry's, whose creations ended up in cupboards and Christmas stockings all over the country. So rather than simply buying some chocolate, we thought we'd try making it ourselves. We'd arrived at York Cocoa Works to take part in their bean-to-bar workshop, an experience that promised to show us how chocolate is really made, starting with the humble cacao bean. Before getting our hands dirty, our guide Maia took us behind the scenes for a tour of the factory. This isn't just a place that sells chocolate, it's a genuine bean-to-bar chocolate maker where sacks of raw cacao beans arrive from growers around the world before being roasted, cracked, refined and transformed into the bars you'll find in the shop. Standing amongst the machinery with the smell of freshly roasted cacao in the air, it quickly becomes clear that making great chocolate is every bit as much a craft as it is a science. With the factory tour over, it was time to stop watching and start making. We headed across the road to the workshop, where we'd be spending the morning turning raw cacao beans into our very own chocolate. Not just decorating a bar or sprinkling on a few toppings, but following the entire bean-to-bar process by hand. By the end, we'd each have created our own unique blend. There was only one question: would it taste like artisan chocolate or an expensive mistake? Before we made anything, we had to answer the most important question: what kind of chocolate did we actually want to make? The workshop began with a tasting session, sampling cacao nibs from different regions around the world. Just like coffee or wine, each origin has its own distinct character. Some were bright and fruity, others rich and nutty, while a few were surprisingly earthy and intense. We also tasted a selection of ingredients that could become part of our final recipe, experimenting with different combinations to find the flavours we liked best. It was fascinating how small changes could completely transform the finished chocolate. There were no right or wrong answers here, just the chance to create something that was entirely our own. Recipes chosen, ingredients weighed, time for the moment of truth. Everything went into the grinder, where a pair of heavy granite wheels began the slow job of turning cacao nibs into silky chocolate. We'd imagined chocolate making would involve a bit more dramatic stirring and a bit less patient waiting, but as the mixture gradually became smoother and the room filled with the smell of chocolate, it was hard to complain. For the first time, it actually started to feel like we were making chocolate rather than just learning about it. Once the cacao had been ground into a smooth paste, it was time to build the flavour. One by one, we added the ingredients we'd chosen during the tasting session, carefully sticking to the ratios we'd decided on earlier. Maia had even managed to source some coconut blossom sugar, especially for us. A lovely surprise and one we couldn't resist working into our recipes. Finally came the cocoa butter, the last piece of the puzzle. As it melted into the mixture, everything came together into what was unmistakably chocolate. It was fascinating to see how a handful of carefully measured ingredients, combined in slightly different proportions, could produce something completely unique. Two people following exactly the same process, yet ending up with two very different bars. Next came a part we'd all been looking forward to: tempering the chocolate. At first glance, it looks like an excuse to make a glorious mess. We poured around a third of our chocolate onto a cool granite slab and began working it back and forth with scrapers. As the chocolate cooled, tiny, stable cocoa butter crystals started to form. The secret to chocolate with a glossy finish, a satisfying snap, and a smooth melt. There's also something wonderfully hands-on about it. You're not just following a recipe, you can actually feel the chocolate changing beneath the scrapers as it thickens. Once it reached the right consistency, we folded it back into the rest of the batch, spreading those stable crystals throughout the mixture. With our chocolate finally tempered, there was just one thing left to do: pour it into moulds and hope that all the careful measuring and mixing had paid off. With the tempering complete, the moment of truth had arrived. Watching the moulds fill was strangely satisfying. Thick, glossy ribbons of chocolate flowed into the moulds, each one carrying the recipe we'd spent the morning creating. After a few careful taps to level everything out, the bars disappeared into the fridge to set, giving the cacao butter time to set into that perfect crystal structure we'd worked so hard to create. Carefully turning the moulds over, we've popped our bars free to see the results of the morning's work. Jolly's was exactly what you'd expect from a professional chocolatier. Perfectly tempered, beautifully glossy, and almost too good to eat. Mine had a bit more character. Let's call it artisan.